Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to absolutely transform how you see modern romance, and we're doing it by looking deep, deep into our genetic past. We are going to strip away the dating apps, forget the candlelit restaurants, and ignore those awkward opening lines at the bar. Instead, we're tracing the very first sparks of romantic and sexual signaling in our entire species.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture a clearing in what is now Kenya. We're going back 300,000 years. There's no bouquet of flowers, and there's definitely no witty text message sitting unanswered while you just spiral. No, there are just two people standing by a fire. One of them is rubbing red ochre powder onto their own skin, and they're just kind of glancing sideways, right? Just checking to see if the other person is watching. And somewhere in that wordless, quiet moment, the earliest known form of flirting was happening. All right, section 1, the biology of attraction. To understand why you feel so incredibly awkward making eye contact at a coffee shop today, we have to start with the basics of our biology. You know, back in 1871, Charles Darwin noticed some genuinely peculiar things about us humans. He realized that stuff like our elaborate voices, or even our capacity for telling jokes, didn't really fit the standard survival model. I mean, being funny doesn't exactly help you outrun a hungry predator or forage for berries, right? So why do we have these traits? Well, Darwin figured out there are basically two games being played. There's natural selection, those are the traits just for surviving, like running fast. But then there's his second, much quieter idea. Sexual selection. These are traits that exist purely to get you chosen by a mate. Think of a peacock's tail. It literally makes the bird slower and way more visible to predators, but peahens love it, so the tail stays. In a very real biological sense, you are carrying traits right now that exist simply because your ancestors successfully used them to get noticed. But here is where it gets really fascinating. Flirting? We didn't even invent it. Look at our primate cousins. Chimpanzees will groom each other for hours. And it's not just about staying clean, it's actual social currency, a real invitation of trust. And bonobos? They will approach each other with very specific postures, this exaggerated swagger, and facial expressions that are 100% intentional signaling. Because we share a common ancestor with these primates from roughly 5 to 7 million years ago, this proves flirting totally predates the human species. We didn't invent the game, we just inherited it. Moving right along to Section 2, humanity's first makeup kit. Let's dig into the archaeological record and see what happens when early humans start getting dressed up. Let's fast forward a bit to about 100,000 years ago in South Africa, at a place called Bonobos Cave. Archaeologists found something literally incredible there. Ochre, deliberately ground into a fine powder and mixed inside these abalone shells. Guys, this is, for all intents and purposes, a 100,000-year-old makeup kit. You don't create an ancient kit to grind red pigment into a paste unless you intend to put it somewhere visible, on your skin, your hair, your face, for someone specific to see. And it wasn't just makeup. Early humans were literally crossing continents for fashion. Archaeologists have found these tiny perforated tick shells in Morocco and Israel dating back up to 140,000 years ago. And they have wear patterns on them, meaning they were strung on cords and worn as necklaces. What's completely mind-blowing here is that these shells were sourced dozens, sometimes hundreds of kilometers away from where they were found. Let's be real, nobody hauls a seashell across a continent just for basic survival. You do it because it says something about you, and you really want someone to notice it. It's literally the oldest known jewelry on Earth. So what does this all mean? Well, getting dressed up naturally implies you have an audience. It highlights this incredibly timeless human urge to communicate without opening your mouth at all. Your appearance has always been a primary tool for silent, ancient communication. Okay, Section 3, cross-species romance. And honestly, this part of our history is genuinely wild. 1 to 4%. That is the actual amount of Neanderthal DNA carried by most people alive today with non-African ancestry. Let that sink in. That is not a rounding error. That is living, biological proof inside the genome of billions of people that at some point, a Homo sapiens and a Neanderthal looked at each other across a fire and something just clicked. They found each other compelling enough to actually bridge the species gap. No way around it. And we know this wasn't just some random accident, because Neanderthals were actively playing the dating game too. At a site in Croatia from around 130,000 years ago, we found their dating tactics. They were using pigments, collecting specific feathers for adornment, and deliberately modifying actual eagle talons to wear as jewelry.
It completely proves that Neanderthals were trying to stand out in their own Ice Age way, making themselves attractive to anyone looking, and obviously our direct ancestors were looking.
Which brings us to Section 4, the senses of seduction. Because flirting isn't just about what you see, let's talk about movement and scent. If ancient romance had a soundtrack, it was rhythm. Dance is a near universal human behavior. Whenever anthropologists study isolated hunter-gatherer societies, they basically always find dance rituals tied directly to courtship. It's an exaggerated display of energy, right? So actually, dancing badly at a wedding isn't just embarrassing. Getting out on that floor is an ancient, low-risk way to demonstrate to a potential partner that your body works well. It is literally a live audition of your genetic fitness.
But wait, what about scent? We almost never talk about smell when it comes to attraction, right? Well, let's talk about Klaus Wittekind's famous 1990s sweaty t-shirt study. Men wore the same shirt for 2 nights, no deodorant allowed. Then, women smelled the shirts and rated how attractive they found the scent. The result? Women consistently preferred the scent of men whose immune system genes, specifically the MHC genes, differed the most from their own. Why? Because different immune genes mean a stronger immune profile for any future kids. This study absolutely proved that your nose is secretly running a complex genetic background check on every person you get close enough to smell. It's happening completely without your conscious thought.
Okay, let's wrap this up with Section 5, Ancient Dating Guides. What happens when humans finally invent writing? Well, all those silent, primal instincts immediately went down on paper. When we look at this unbroken chain, from primates millions of years ago, to Neanderthal talons, to ancient makeup, all the way to 2000 BC, it completely shatters the myth that ancient people were cold or just purely transactional in their relationships. They were exactly like us. Take the Istanbul 2461 tablet, for example. It is the oldest known love poem in human history, written in cuneiform for a Sumerian sacred marriage ceremony roughly 4,000 years ago. It reads with this warmth and physical longing that instantly collapses the distance of time. These were real people who wanted their affection etched into permanent stone. Or skip ahead to ancient Rome, roughly 2 AD. We have Ovid writing a literal dating guide called The Art of Love. And his advice is startlingly modern. He basically says, go to where the crowds are, brush against a shoulder, strike up a conversation, but whatever you do, don't overdo the compliments. Because apparently Romans could smell desperation from 2,000 years away just as well as we can today. And you see different cultures using their own unique flirting technologies. In Egypt around 1300 BC, people were rocking thick kohl eyeliner for dramatic effect, and they literally placed perfumed cones of scented fat on top of their wigs. These would slowly melt at parties, releasing fragrance just like an ancient cologne. Meanwhile, in Greece around 600 BC, they turned flirting into a sport of witty banter at symposiums, reciting Sappho's intense poetry about racing hearts. The tools totally changed, from ochre to melting fat to clever verses, but the core goal was exactly the same. So, what's the big takeaway here? Underneath all our modern technology, from ancient shell necklaces to agonizing over a text message with slightly too many exclamation points, the ancient engine is still running. The next time you spend way too long deciding what to wear, remember, you are participating in the oldest continuous behavior of our species. The nerves, the instinct to stand out, the sheer awkwardness, you inherited the whole shebang. That single, wordless moment by a fire 300,000 years ago, that was probably the oldest love story humanity has ever told. So let me ask you, will you look at your next awkward romantic encounter differently, knowing that you are the successful result of an unbroken, millions of years old survival game? Because every single ancestor you ever had played this exact same game and won. So get out there and keep the story going. Thanks for joining me in this explainer.